Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, August 19th, 2026 meeting of the Preservation Commission. The meeting is now called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Today's meeting is being streamed live on YouTube in English and Spanish. Please note that live captioning and translations are AI generated and may contain errors. Members, please unmute your microphones for roll call. Member Cross?
Here.
Member McSlavin?
Here.
Member Merker?
Here.
Member Nicholas is absent. Member Rika is absent. And Chair Ambacher.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you. Before we begin, a brief reminder for members of the public in attendance. Speaker slips are to be submitted digitally. You can register to speak by scanning the QR code posted at the back of the chambers or through the kiosk. Submissions must be received prior to the item being called. Once the item is called, public comment will be closed. Each speaker will be allowed 2 minutes to speak. We'll now proceed with today's agenda. Please rise if you are able for the opening acknowledgement in honor of Sacramento's indigenous peoples and tribal lands. To the original people of this land, the Nisene people of the Southern Maidu Valley and Plains Miwok, the Patwin Wintun peoples, and the people of the Wilton Rancheria, Sacramento's only federally recognized tribe. May we acknowledge and honor the Native people who came before us and still walk beside us today on these ancestral lands by choosing to gather together today in the active practice of acknowledgement and appreciation for Sacramento's indigenous peoples' history, contributions, and lives. Thank you. Please remain standing if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So next is the approval of the consent calendar. Let's see. Clerk, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on the consent calendar?
Thank you, Chair. I do believe we have a speaker on the consent calendar. We do not have any speakers for the consent calendar.
Thank you. Are there any commissioners who wish to speak on this item? Is there a motion and a second for the consent calendar?
Motion to accept the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Chair, we will go ahead and do a voice vote for this item. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstain? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will now proceed to the items under the discussion calendar. And so, changed my script on me. It's throwing me off. So the discussion calendar is the update regarding the proposed Sacramento Zoo expansion. Are there any commissioners who have any disclosures or recusals they wish to make? Okay, and is there a staff presentation? Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Dustin Hollingsworth. I'm the Assistant Director of the Department of Convention and Cultural Services. I'm also the city's designated representative to the Sacramento Zoological Society's board. Also here today with me is the Society's President of the board, Elizabeth Stollard, and CEO Dan Simon. I'm here today to provide you with an update of the proposed expansion of the Sacramento Zoo within William Land Park. The Sacramento Zoo is approaching its 100-year anniversary in 2027, and the partnership between the city and the Sacramento Zoological Society goes back quite a ways as well, going back all the way to the early 1980s. When the zoo was operated by the city and the society provided fundraising support and educational programs to the public. Then in 1997, the city entered into an operating agreement with the society, whereby the society would manage daily operations of the zoo on behalf of the city. Over the past 40 years, discussions of expansion and relocation have been recurring themes for the city and the society. More than half a dozen sites around the city and beyond have been evaluated for suitability, and a variety of expansions within William Land Park have been considered.
Forgive us, the slides are a little out of order for what we would have liked. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here. Again, I'm Elizabeth Stallard, the president of the Board of Trustees of the Sacramento Zoological Society. And so this slide, why does the zoo need to expand? Well, first of all, obviously, we have an obligation to the animals that we house at the zoo. We are accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. That's really the gold standard in terms of zoos that are accredited in this country. All of the zoos that you know are wonderful, like San Diego and Bronx and all of that, are accredited by the AZA. So we, over time, as you've probably seen if you've been to a zoo recently, you see that zoos have changed because we're responding to the habitat needs, the behavioral needs, and the nutritional needs, everything else related to housing the animals in our care. The short answer is we need more space in order to appropriately do that for the animals we keep. If you've noticed, even over the past 10 to 15 years, we have moved larger species in particular out of the zoo because we simply don't have the space to provide them with what's required under AZA guidelines and what's required really to provide them with the quality of life that they deserve. So that's priority number one. That's our mission, supporting endangered species, supporting conservation. That's why the zoo needs to expand. That also goes into the AZA accreditation standards. Being accredited allows us to participate in breeding programs with other zoos, to share animals, to bring in educational support, to provide that support for conservation. So we need to maintain our accreditation. Of course, we're also very proud that we don't just serve the city of Sacramento, but we serve this entire region. We have been here almost 100 years. Next year will be our 100th year. And we know that we are a draw not just for children, but also adults within Sacramento, beyond, and that people come to Sacramento. One of the reasons why is to see our beautiful zoo. And the last point on here, obviously, is, as we all know, over time, we have to continue to remain relevant and provide a visitor experience that people want to have. Certainly, having animals that people expect to see in zoos is part of that. Being able to provide opportunities to interact, get closer to animals, to see the ways that they experience life, to maybe see them in mixed species environments, that helps us to bring more visitors in. To see babies, to have the space to have family groups, right? All of those things help us to continue to have people coming to the zoo every year so we can support our mission and so we can continue to thrive and operate in the community. I'm not sure what's next.
So how did we get here? That's what's next. In June of 2025, the city and the society, we extended our existing operating agreement and committed to engage in good faith negotiations with each other concerning the creation of the new partnership. And to analyze the operational conditions for continued and future operations of the zoo within the Land Park location, including space constraints. Then in September 2025, the society sent the city a request to expand the operating footprint within Land Park with the goal of remaining in Land Park and making a number of improvements that would materially impact both the animal habitats as well as visitor amenities. In response, the city manager's office suggested an MOU that brought us forward to this point. In April of 26, the society and the city entered into that MOU, establishing a framework to explore potential expansion of the zoo with the expectation of returning to council this September with an amendment to the operating agreement. From May through July, the focus has been on addressing the items within the MOU. The MOU is a non-binding agreement that provided a guide for the city and the society to begin exploring expansion of the zoo here in Land Park. To be clear, the MOU did not authorize expansion of the zoo, it did not commit land to the zoo, and it did not commit any funding. It only established a framework of things to be considered and provided city staff to participate in the activities necessary to explore the expansion and to develop a recommendation for next steps as appropriate. Expanding the zoo's boundaries will require council action in the form of an amendment to the operating agreement, which the city and society are currently negotiating. Per the MOU, city staff would evaluate the implications of impacts on the Parks Plan. The Parks Planning Division has evaluated the expansion and determined that the zoo, if the zoo were to expand, it would not require any modifications to that plan. Also in alignment with the MOU, the city and society collaborated in developing a community engagement strategy for the public to learn about and provide feedback on the proposed expansion. In addition, a working group of representatives from the Land Park Community Association, the Upper Land Park Neighbors Association, South Land Park Neighborhood Association, Land Park Volunteer Corps, and Preservation Sacramento was convened to provide input and suggestions on the proposed expansion. Preservation Sacramento was specifically included to assure the voice of the preservation community was present. When the zoo initially announced that they had approached the city regarding the expansion, Preservation Sacramento sent a letter to the Preservation Director, Sean DeCourcy, commenting on potential impacts to 4 things: the Swanston Memorial stone walls and the water feature, views to and from the Swanston Memorial and Lily Pond, the Pony Ride area, and the Camellia Society Sacramento Garden. Finally, as part of the MOU, the city and the society have worked together to identify relevant amendments to the operating agreement appropriate to the expansion of the zoo. Considerations for design, funding, and the satisfaction of legal requirements as they pertain to historical features, trees, utilities, parking, traffic, and CEQA, as well as other potential environmental studies were considered. What's the expansion look like? And we're going back to Liz, the fun.
All right, the fun part. So what you have in front of you is a map. It shows the current zoo site, right, with Sutterville along the, I'll say the southern border here. We're a little bit off kilter. The areas of proposed expansion that you see, first of all, of course, across Land Park Drive, about 4.4 acres. That's what we call the Pony Ride parcel, or the former Pony Ride parcel. And then the other portion of the expansion is about 1.2 acres-ish. That is directly north of our current footprint, and that you see represented is basically the 2 areas wrapping around the statue and fountain area. When we initially put out our proposed expansion, when we contacted the city, we had drawn that a little bit differently, and it had included the fountain. When we came to council for approval of the MOU, we had a number of people raise concerns. That was really the primary concern that was raised, was about the fountain, the Swanson statue and the fountain area. And so once the MOU was approved and before we even started community engagement pursuant to the MOU, we carved the statue and fountain out of our proposed plan, and we redrew the lines in order to kind of try and catch up some of that land elsewhere. We did lose a little bit of the proposed land, but we have roughly the same amount at that northern border, and of course it did take that feature out, which addresses 2 of the items that you heard Dustin reference with respect to the statue and the views from the statue. This is a closer view of, you can see if you follow the dotted line, the vision we would have from the existing area of the zoo. For those of you who've been there recently, we have currently on that area education functions, like we have our trailers related to camp and some fenced-in areas for camp students, and we have other services there that, as you'll see when we get to the next slide, we intend to move across the street as part of an education campus that necessarily would open up space on the current site for us to do what you see here. Primarily what we would like to do is move past our current okapi habitat, and you can see we can make another loop, a path through the zoo that provides for better circulation for accommodating our visitors, but also to build in some additional habitats. Some examples of possible habitats: we have a tropical forest zone that you'll see on the kind of left hand of this picture. We've listed, kind of an immersive experience. We could put in, tapirs, or maybe we'd have orangutan move there, hornbills, gibbons, reptiles, insects, all sorts of ideas for things we could do in that area. And then, of course, we've kind of constructed another loop that we would build out over the remaining area that becomes vacated, and you can see our reptile house and our amphitheater just north of that, maybe an Australasia zone, where we could welcome animals, kangaroos, wallabies, cassowaries, emu. You see all sorts of examples. The idea is to give you a sense of what we might be able to do and how we could reconfigure the zoo with even just that, what may seem like a small amount of additional space. It would give us quite a bit of flexibility that we don't have now to really build more and to change the habitat structure that we have on site. And this, of course, is across the street, the education campus that I mentioned. Again, we would move our education functions across the street. We welcome about 50,000 school children every year who come for field trips. We also have our camp programs, our Little Peeps programs, and all of those programs we would intend to then now relocate across the street as part of the education campus. And so you see a rough sense of it. We would have one structure or building. We've tried to locate that in the area that is the most open, so we can take the most advantage of the existing treescape and other kind of landscaping that's there, and have it closest to the existing infrastructure of the park and the restrooms and things like that. And then the rest of it would be really an open campus with some smaller animal habitats you see represented by the circles, small animal holdings that you see represented by those little brown squares, the kind of animals that you might meet in our ambassador programs. For those of you who've been able to participate, maybe birds, smaller, primate species, armadillos, things like that. That's what we would expect to be across the street. And then, of course, again, the primary habitat areas would remain at the main campus, but moving these services across the street, providing an extra space that is climate controlled, that we can use for events and for teaching and other opportunities, and providing another open space that allows us to stage student groups, have a drop-off zone that's safer, that hopefully will reduce the traffic and parking burden in that area of Land Park when we can provide a dedicated area. That's kind of our vision for across the street. So let's see. I will start walking through this. As Dustin mentioned, we have spent the entire summer on an education program and soliciting community feedback about the proposal. What's listed here are issues that have come up as part of the community feedback. Certainly, we've been very pleased, and we are certainly pleased that people are excited about the zoo remaining in Lamb Park. It certainly wasn't a possibility for us the last time we were looking at space in Sacramento, and obviously some things have changed with respect to uses in Lamb Park, primarily with the pony ride parcel, and really an opportunity here that didn't exist for us before. We have the historical elements that have come up and concerns about how we're addressing them. I won't belabor the point. We've talked about how we've responded with respect to the statue in the fountain area. Dustin mentioned two other areas with respect to the pony ride parcel. There really is no remaining infrastructure from the pony ring that's already been removed, so that's not an existing issue to mitigate. And then with respect to the Camellia Garden, we've actually been in communication with the president of that society, the Camellia Society, and they've indicated support for the garden becoming incorporated into this proposed plan. And our hope would be, and our expectation would be, we'll work with them, or kind of with a way to honor the significance of it in that space. Either with removing the plants and putting them in planters in a safer location, or potentially something in the existing area, signage, something like that. But we intend to honor the existing garden as part of that space. And again, because it's primarily going to be open space across the street and part of the zoo area, for gathering outdoors, it works perfectly. Other things about park access, again, we've talked about that a little bit. We actually think the plan is designed to try and mitigate impact and also hopefully help with some of those traffic and parking impacts. Again, we currently have 50,000 kids who cross those streets to get into the zoo for camp and for school groups and more. This hopefully will make it more organized and safer, but we obviously will work with the city, and we've been collecting feedback about better ways to manage that. Again, tree removal, I won't go through each of these one-on-one, but certainly people have asked us about things like attendance increases. Our expectation is really we're not adding parking. We don't expect a material change to attendance. We do certainly expect that we get the bumps that we usually get with baby animals or a new habitat opening. And really this allows us to keep having those experiences for people and keep our attendance up at what it is, and to allow us to continue to generate interest in coming when we have to charge more due to increasing costs, and when we have to obviously be an attraction in town that people still want to visit. Again, new habitats and species, we're excited about those opportunities and better guest amenities. As we build new habitats, we get to build them in better ways to interact with the public. I'm sure if you've been and seen some of our newer habitats, we get to do more glass, we get to do more behind the scenes experiences, things like that. That's also a way we can generate increased revenue, but also add to the visitor experience. And again, this last line I'll go through: CEQA requirements and process, timelines, funding and phasing, and our conservation initiatives. Those are all topics that have come up. Obviously, a lot of these components are part of how we build exhibits already. The nice thing about doing this on the existing site and expanding out is we will be able to build as we fundraise and as we're ready to build out these certain components while continuing to operate the zoo. And so, really this is the way we operate now, and we I'll pat ourselves on the back. The society does it very well. The zoo functions well and financially responsibly, and this is a great way to continue to allow us to do so for the next, generation plus. And with that.
So next steps, on September 1st, we'll be returning to City Council. Anticipate bringing the proposed amendment to the operating agreement that would set the path forward to be able to explore this, or to be able to move forward with the expansion. And that's it.
Thank you. Clerk, are there any members of, the, excuse me, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do have several members of the public that would like to speak on this item. Our first speaker will be Blake.
Bruce?
Blake.
Starts with a B? Okay, so do I have the 2 minutes? Is that the way this works? Okay, let's start it then. I'm Blake Stevenson, and good afternoon to all of you. I support the Swanson Memorial, its paths, its waterfalls, gardens, and the surrounding land, as we see them today. This is a piece of history and Depression-era craftsmanship, and it's more, though. Its beauty moves adults to slow down and stand on the hill where you look down from the statue, and you see 20 acres lying in front of you, and you see the pond with the fountain in the middle of it. Or if you turn around, you'll see the 2 great oak trees, the heritage oak trees that are estimated to be 300 years old. Whom have I seen there? Well, parents with the kids typically running up and down the pathways or playing in the waterfall. People taking engagement photos, graduation photos. I've even seen a proposal about to be made, and I got out of there. My favorite was a family that had spread out carpets on the grassy area just below the statue, and they were having their dinner there on the carpets. And these people are from everywhere. They're from here. They're from Folsom, Red Bluff, and Redding. I know because I asked. A few weeks ago, early on a Saturday, I spoke with a woman who was sitting on one of the rock places you can sit, and had a book in her hand. I spoke with her. She said she comes there most weeks, early in the morning, to contemplate, be quiet, read. Earlier this year, the plans for zoo expansion, whereas the previous speakers mentioned, they were changed to take out some of the paths, the statue, the gazebos, and some of the gardens from the zoo expansion plan. This was appreciated, but it was a halfway step. It would still take much of the gardens into the zoo and eliminate some pathways. It would allow fences or walls to be built right up to the back of 2 of the gazebos, meaning you sit there in the round of gazebo and you have a wall at your back or close to your back. It would leave the Daffodil Hill grassy area in the zoo, in the expanded zoo. This is a saving of this area in name only, and basically creates a keyhole surrounded by walls. The area to be protected must be enlarged.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is up. Our next speaker will be Bruce.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bruce Marwick, and I'm a member of the Upperland Park Neighbors Association, and I have been a participant on the Sacramento Zoo Expansion Working Group. I'm here to advocate for the statue and for the gardens on the north side of the zoo. And while the zoo's expansion plan currently excludes the Swanson area, its proposed fence line comes uncomfortably close to the garden seating areas, and in some cases directly cuts off several of the walking paths. Provided in your packet is a site plan that we're hopefully going to get passed out that shows an alternate fence line concept. This new fence line would allow the Swanson's Gardens to have more open space, a larger tree canopy. Additionally, we have provided 3 drawings showing how the northeast corner of the Swanson Gardens look today, and how they will look with the zoo's recommended fence line, and how they would look with more park-oriented fence line, somewhat our community proposal. Our alternate site plan will provide more open space, preserve important New Deal era features, such as a terrific historic granite bench in front of a wonderful redwood, and walkways that will actually connect to each other. Hopefully, the Sacramento City Preservation Commission will support our recommendations for a site plan that supports the Swanson statue and gardens as a dynamic resource for William Land Park visitors in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker will be Larry. Larry?
Hello, Larry Stetson with Upperland Park Neighbors and part of the working group. You're getting the chart and the site plan that Bruce was speaking to. And you can see the green line moves out the zoo's yellow space and gives more space around the fountain so there can be continuous walkways. We were part of the working group, as Dustin said. Unfortunately, at those meetings and now, the zoo continues to say this is a concept, and we don't have many project details. So much is unknown, but key park issues include eliminating park views and open space of the Pony Ride and Camellia areas on the southeast corner of Land Park Drive in Sutterville, north to Fairy Tale Town. 4.4 acres will be enclosed with an 8-foot fence and razor wire at the park's major entrance, creating a tunnel effect with the existing fencing around the current zoo. The new fence must be set back and landscaped to minimize impacts. There also could be unnecessary impacts to the historic park and park users. If the zoo builds new fences around the expansion areas and can't start construction, it would unnecessarily damage the park's open space and reduce access to those areas by park users. Expansion areas should remain as is until the zoo has identified funding to complete construction. The zoo said at the working group that's what they would do, so therefore that language should be put in the operating agreement. We appreciate the exclusion of the Swanston Monument, but as other speakers said, they're taking out many of the walkways and pathways. And as a Parks Commissioner said, this is the most peaceful place in the park, and as much space as possible should remain. At the Parks Commission meeting, the zoo said we were reading too much into their concept, but at 2 of the work group meeting walkarounds, the zoo fence line was always pointed out at the locations on the maps that you have in front of you. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Our last speaker on this item will be Christina.
Good evening, Commissioners. As the president of the Land Park Community Association, I can tell you the current board is supportive of the zoo expansion, and we've been engaged to help achieve a thoughtful, community-oriented expansion reflecting the historic charm of William Land Park, and we've attended zoo workshops to share our ideas and our concerns. The zoo is beloved by William Land Park community, but it's not the only important amenity. They must balance their space with others like Fairy Tale Town, the golf course, baseball fields, large events, and family picnic areas. Part of that balance is a thoughtful plan for parking. We have asked the zoo to consider a visitor shuttle service for weekends and holidays to mitigate traffic. Other zoos do this, and it's very common. Yet at a July workshop with community leaders, the zoo leadership said there was little acknowledgement about the traffic concerns. In fact, the board president of the Sac Zoological Society expressed she didn't expect attendance to increase after the expansion. But as they just showed you a slide where they do plan to increase attendance, now I'm confused. So if you're not aware, the zoo has tried to expand for 43 years, and in past discussions with the city and community, parking and traffic was also addressed, and the zoo didn't provide a solid plan back then either. William Land Park is over 100 years old and was never designed to manage the park traffic it has today. Any expansion plan must have a clear solution to traffic issues. I ask you to think about this. Take some time and visit William Land Park if you haven't lately. Sit under the wisteria at Swanson Stream and listen to the fountain. Have a local beer at the golf course on the patio. Sit by the pond and feed the ducks or watch a baseball game. Then go back on a holiday weekend like Labor Day on September 5th and 6th. Our park is meant to be a peaceful green space for everyone to enjoy. Adding more concrete and squeezing more cars in is the opposite of that. So please support Land Park's long-term integrity with a contract where zoo leadership acknowledges these basic issues in writing and has real solutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Chair, there are no other speakers on this item.
Thank you. Are there any, excuse me, are there any commissioners who wish to speak on this item? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Just absorbing some of the comments that were made by the public. I appreciate the comments that were given. Very much appreciate hearing more information about the nuances of the resources surrounding or as part of the zoo and the human activity that occurs in that area. I think as this project moves forward, that public comment is going to be critical to understanding what the final design ends up being for this concept. I know with the Elk Grove proposal for a zoo, there was a subject matter expert in zoo design. I hope that that type of engagement continues with this effort as well. I think that is going to be critical to creating a viable solution here. And I would also like to point out that there's not only the Swanson statue and that area and the Camellia Garden as current historic resources in the area. I know that the 1961 Rickey and Brooks entry portal is a listed structure. I'm sure there's other listed structures or potential listed or potential listings in the area that hopefully the Director DeCourcy can discuss with us as well as we move forward, and understanding how that works into the context of this project. So I hope to hear more in the future on further developments and how this reviewing body, which is supposed to address historic elements, cultural elements related to Land Park.
Thank you. Are there any other further comments? Max?
Just more process question. We're not making a formal recommendation here, are we? We're just commenting if we so choose?
Yeah, this is just for review and comment.
Okay.
Well, if there's no further comments, again, this item is just to receive and comment, so no vote is required. So we're going to move on to the next item, which is the director's report.
All right, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have a few items to report this evening. I wanted to follow up on several historic resource nominations of interest to the Commission. The State Historical Resources Commission considered these nominations on August 7th at its meeting and approved the nomination of Grant Union High School, El Dorado School, and the Thompson's Dig Company Building, and recommended these properties for listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So they are being processed by the keeper of the National Register. If you recall, you did review El Dorado School as a local landmark nomination as well. That property, as well as three other historic resources that you reviewed, one in East Sacramento, another in Land Park, and another in Curtis Park, another in Oak Park, are going to be heard by the City Council next week on August 25th. So those that's at a 2 p.m. hearing, so those will be reviewed by City Council based on your recommendation supporting listing. And then I wanted to provide you an update on several grants that we've received and also applied for in recent months. So the city received a $10,500 certified local government grant through the Office of Historic Preservation. We're coordinating with economic development to use that grant funding for Native American interpretive panels along the Sacramento waterfront associated with the children's playground that's under construction now. And we're continuing work on our underrepresented communities grant with Page and Turnbull to update the old Sacramento National Register nomination. That submittal is nearing completion, so we'll be submitting to the State Office of Historic Preservation for their review and comment shortly. And we, over the last couple months since you've met the last time, we actually completed 3 separate grant applications. These are all federal grants. The first is a $750,000 grant with a 1-to-1 match, so $1.5 million would be the total project budget, and that is to support the boardwalk replacement in Old Sacramento. We do not know if we'll, all the next 3, we don't know if we'll receive funding yet, but we've applied for all of these, so we're hopeful. And then the next is a National Park Service Underrepresented Communities Grant for another cultural historic context and survey project. That would be a $75,000 grant should we be successful. And then we applied for a Bureau of Land Management Agency grant for $75,000 that would support modernization and digitization of the city's cultural resource inventory system, so creating our own GIS-linked inventory portal where the public and staff could quickly access our cultural resource records that we have on file. That's all I have for the grant update, and then I wanted to note that we've are currently processing 30 Mills Act applications. That is the largest number of Mills Act applications that the program has received since it was restarted in 2018. And those applications are out to the property owners for signature, and we'll be taking those to City Council before the end of the year for a decision on each of those contracts by City Council. So we're excited about the uptick in applications this year and look forward to processing those through to active contracts. That concludes my director's report, and I can answer any questions at this time.
Are there any questions for Sean?
The grant that you are applying for underrepresented communities, do you have an idea what the focus of, should you receive it, what the city's focus would be?
We propose to do a historic context and survey focused on Japanese American historic experience in Sacramento.
Any further questions? Thank you, Sean. We're going to move on now to the commissioner comments and ideas. Are there any commissioners who wish to speak? Okay, thank you. The next item is the public comments on matters not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do have one speaker for this item. Christina?
Hello again. I didn't expect to speak a second time, but then I thought, why not just give it a chance here? So I live on Darnell Way, which is right behind the Del Rio Trail and where the old Sacramento train goes. And I've lived in that neighborhood for about 24 years. And we used to have some beautiful old growth before they put in the Del Rio Trail. So on both sides, you had growth, you had wildlife. It was really nice to feel like you had a suburban environment in an urban core, near an urban core, right? So like a lot of people, I understand that when you live near a city, things are going to evolve and things are going to happen. So with the Del Rio Trail, we welcomed it, but my husband did go to meetings and talk about those trees because they did give us a semblance of privacy. Well, what happened is when they put in the trail, they tore down all the trees. So now the Del Rio Trail and the old train tracks, they're not behind our fence, they're above our fence. And we have working class neighborhoods. So people are now, when the train comes down, you've got tourists with cameras and phones looking down into our backyards 4 times a day on the weekend, sometimes 7 o'clock at night. It's really difficult. I think it's kind of an overreach. And I love the old train museum. I used to take my kids there all the time. But the thing is that the tourists don't get any benefit from going back there either. It's not just us. When I'm a tourist, I like to have a view of the river, and that's a great view. They can stop there and not go over and come into our neighborhood. But right now, that's what they're doing, and that's what they insist on doing. And they're not really thinking of, how this impacts the neighborhood and our privacy. I have nowhere else to go. That's my backyard. We also have a special needs kid in the neighborhood. He uses that backyard to get his wiggles out of his system. We have people with anxiety who have a pool who would like to use it, but they don't because, going in and out based on the train schedule doesn't seem to work. So I hope that you consider this, and maybe if you know somebody at the old train museum, to have a discussion with them, see if they can just stop at the river's edge there and then go back. I think it would show respect for the neighborhood, and it would just bring good feelings all around from the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Chair, there are no other speakers.
Thank you, Clerk. In that case, this concludes today's agenda. Thank you, everyone, for your participation, and the meeting is adjourned.